Hey everybody, David Eon here with a little bit of a consumer message for you, and that consumer message is you're doing media mail all wrong. Yes, all you comic and video game collectors, you've been doing it wrong and you're taking a big risk, bigger than you might realize. As many times as you've gotten away with it, you're not supposed to put comic books, magazines, or video games in media mail. They are prohibited items. And this comes out of a situation that I've had just recently that I'll talk about here in a little bit, where I was selling something to someone and they were trying to insist on the use of media mail, and they got upset because I wouldn't do it. And I won't do it for a reason, and that reason primarily is that the post office, there's a pretty good risk of them examining that package. About 80% of the mail that they inspect packages is media mail, and the reason they inspect that much of it is because that's the shipping service that is most abused when people use the post office. People put all kinds of stuff in there that doesn't go in there because it's got a different shipping rate. It's got a cheaper shipping rate once you pass, I believe, £1, because before that, then of course first class mail will likely be cheaper. So what are the rules? And I'll tell you what happened here in a minute, but what are the rules? Let's take a look. And you see right here, if you're sending the following, then it likely qualifies as media mail. Books of at least 8 pages, printed educational reference charts. That sounds boring. Sound recordings and video recordings like DVDs and CDs, 16 millimeter or narrower films, play scripts and book manuscripts, computer readable media with pre-recorded information and guides prepared solely for use with that media, basically like software discs, printed music, printed objective test materials and accessories, loose leaf pages and their binders with medical info for doctors, medical schools, and students and hospitals. What's not permitted? Items that cannot be shipped via media mail, which we've already kind of discussed here. The items that cannot be shipped via media mail are the items that are not approved. That is everything else. This includes any type of advertising, puzzles, video games, vintage magazines. Even though their ads are old, they are still ads, pencils, and empty binders. And when they say vintage magazines, this is a lot more inclusive than what is being suggested here, because they also mean modern magazines, and they also count comic books as magazines. The post office does. So you bundle comics, a big bundle of comics, and you ship it media mail, you're violating their regulations. And if they happen to inspect your package, and there's a possibility that it might be, one of 3 things is going to happen. Or one of 4, I should say, actually, because they've added to this regulation just recently. Number 1, they'll back charge to the person who shipped it and make them pay the full amount of whatever it costs to ship whatever's in the package. Number 2, if that package has gotten as far as whoever it's being shipped to, they're going to make it COD. So you'll have to go pick it up at the post office, and you're going to have to pay the difference. The customer's going to have to pay the difference. 3, there's a chance they could confiscate it. This is a new thing, and it does happen, where they'll just say, you know what, we're just going to put it in the dead letter office and we'll auction it in the future, which happens to packages with the post office. UPS and FedEx do it too, but on a different scale. Amazon does it too, as a matter of fact. Stuff that gets mislabeled, stuff that gets lost, it ends up in a public auction. And that's where these are going to go if they decide to confiscate it, which may happen if you are someone who does this way too often. And they could also ban a shipper from the service if they're constantly caught doing this. Now, the argument that I had, the person is telling me that, oh, can't you just ship this media mail so that it'll be cheaper? And I'm like, I'm not going to do that because it violates the regulation. I don't want to get into it with the post office. I don't want any trouble with the post office, okay? Well, it should be allowed. It should be allowed to be shipped that way. I agree, but it isn't. It isn't allowed, so I'm not going to do it. And they got upset. They got upset because, oh, everybody does it for me, and I always get it. I always get it shipped this way, and I've never had a problem. Good for you. Then they tell me to have a blessed day, which is a little bit of a trigger. And the reason it's a little bit of a trigger because it gives me a flashback to when I used to work in convenience stores when I was younger in the early 90s. And a lot of times when somebody got upset and would trying to get me to do something I shouldn't do, a customer, they would go into this diatribe about how they're a good Christian. And it's not an attack on Christians by any means, because I know this doesn't apply to everybody, but it happened to me a few times in Massachusetts. I don't know if it's still a rule, but back in the old days, when back in the early 90s when I was working in convenience stores, you can't sell alcohol after 11 o'clock. This is just one example, because this happened to me several times. And they try to get me to sell them beer or wine or whatever, and I'm like, I can't, it's after 11. And then they get angry and they start yelling or they pitch a fit. And then afterwards, they try to reason with me and they're like, listen, I'm a good Christian. And I'm like, you're a good Christian, but you're trying to get me to break the law, risk losing my job so that you can get drunk. And again, it's not, I know that's not a reflection on all Christians, but that's what triggered me, and that's why I'm talking about this when they tell me to have a blessed day. And I'm like, okay, you want me to lie to the post office, cheat the post office, take basically all the risk, and then you want me to have a blessed day. And that's my little diatribe. But back to the point. Back to the point, no, you cannot ship comic books, modern or vintage, magazines, or video games, media mail. And as many times as you've gotten away with it, sooner or later it's going to catch up to you, and it could have very serious repercussions. Besides which, I don't know why you would want to have comics, especially if they're slabbed, shipped media mail, because those packages are handled very roughly. You're taking a big risk of damage. And again, if one last time, if you happen to be Christian, I'm not taking a stab at you. It's just that I've had that thrown at me several times, and of course I realize that not all Christians are the same. Let's just put it that way. Anyways, thoughts? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section down below. Please do give the video a thumbs up if you got something out of that. I hope that helped you to understand. Again, even if it doesn't seem like it makes sense or whether it's fair or not, it's still the rule, and it is what it is. And if that's it, then what more can I say? But thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.